Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Welcome to another episode of the Quiet Light Podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by My Amazon Guy. I know Stephen Pope, the founder, personally. You may have seen him all over YouTube sharing free educational content. If you need someone to level up your PPC, SEO design, and manage your entire Amazon catalog, check him out at myamazonguy.com. Great stuff on YouTube that he does for absolutely nothing. It's free. Great educational material there. You got to check it out. Do a search, My Amazon Guy or myamazonguy.com. Okay, on to today's podcast. Wow, we are talking to a fractional CFO. Guy's name is Matthew Putra, or Matt Putra, from a company called Eightx. And we go over a number of different things that are critical to online entrepreneurs doing, let's say, $1 million or more in revenue. The million or more, really, when you get to that size, it's time to really start thinking deeply about cash flow, preparing your business for getting lines of credits from lenders, banks, whatever they might be, and perhaps even an eventual exit, or deciding, are you going to scale up your staff and your overhead, and what is your capability to do that if things go great, if they go terribly, or if they go just right? That's what a fractional CFO does, and Matt goes into it in detail. We talk about a little bit about his background, but then talk about what he does to help companies get their hands around their cash flow, their forecasts, and things of that nature, and how it helps them scale up. So let's take a listen. This is Matt Putra from Eightx.co. Here we go. Matt, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome, man. Glad you're here. Whereabouts in the world are you?
Vancouver, Canada.
Okay. I'm down in the southeast part of the U.S. And for the folks listening today, can you give a little bit of background on yourself and what you do over there at Eightx?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're fractional CFOs. We have a team of CFOs, vice presidents, and financial analysts. Basically, our goal is to help e-commerce owners scale their businesses with more cash and less stress. We do that with top-notch financial planning, scenario analysis, risk management, and just making sure that we're steps ahead of where you need to be and watching the future for that.
Managing cash flow with less stress. That just seems like an impossibility for most entrepreneurs, and myself often included in that.
Yeah.
We'll dive into that for the purposes of this podcast. Why don't we start with what the heck is a fractional CFO? What do you do? What do you do for your clients? Who needs you?
Absolutely. So, I mean, who needs me? I would say anybody doing, well, who needs somebody like me is anybody doing $1 million and above, I would say, in revenue could benefit from a fractional CFO. What we do is, basically you're going to get the benefit of someone who's worked at the high level, worked as a CFO full time, but they're going to work for you between, 2-4 days a month to 2 days a week. When you're at $1 million a year, I would say you want someone that's going to 2 to 4 days a month, getting up to 60 million, 100 million. You could probably get away with someone that works for you 2-3 days a week. And you get the benefit of someone who's been around the block, made all of the mistakes. And so they're not going to make the mistakes now on your behalf, basically. What do we do? Primarily, our focus is cash and profit optimization. From there, you get the universe of anything else a CFO can do: contract review, hiring planning, goal setting, financing, raising money, kind of all of that, investor reporting. We can do everything, most of us.
Okay. So if I have a full-time bookkeeper or an outsized bookkeeping firm, I would still keep them if I'm hiring a fractional CFO. Is that right?
Most of the time, yes. A bunch of us have bookkeeping divisions. When I would say if you're talking to a CFO who has a bookkeeping division, I would suggest moving bookkeeping to them, just because then they can work hand in hand with the bookkeeper that's reporting to them on a daily, weekly, whatever basis. But if by no means do you have to switch. Most bookkeepers out there are talented. Your CFO is only going to make them better. And we work well with other bookkeepers.
Okay. My first thought is, man, this sounds cost prohibitive. We're getting a CFO at, it's been a very high level of large organizations, and now they're going to look at my P&L. It's going to take me a lot of time to work with them and get them to understand how much is this, going to cost me, and how do I get my positive return on investment? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So in terms of costs, I'm very, very transparent. You can go to my site. There's a calculator. You're going to be paying anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a month, depending how big you are, based on your revenue only. In terms of the cost of your time. So we have now figured out basically how to minimize the cost of your time. So what we do is we have a list of questions in the beginning. you answer a lot of questions. You're on a bunch of phone calls with us as we get on board. But I would say that's not more than 10 hours in the first 2 months to really get us to understand. We dig into your QuickBooks, we dig into your Shopify, all your channels, talk to your bookkeeper, talk to your accountant. We do all the work to get us on board ourselves. And the things that we need you for is, what do you want the next couple of years to look like? Who do you want to hire next? And those are pretty lightweight questions, lightweight phone calls.
Who do I want to hire next? Why would a fractional CFO firm be involved in that?
Yeah, well, I mean, cash optimization, right? So if you're at a certain level and you want to hire 2 people, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add those 2 roles to our financial plan and check, can you afford it cash wise? What does it do profit wise? And then I'm going to come back with a recommendation saying, hey, could you wait or go ahead and do it, because it could be a leverage point for you.
Okay, so if I wanted to increase my net income percentage from 23 to 26%, is that something that a fractional CFO is going to dive into and say, you can do it this way, or you're not going to be able to do it, or how's it work?
100%. I mean, this is part of the thing is, we'll look at a year and we'll say, okay, this is where we are. Where do you want to be? If it's 23 to 26, we're going to say, okay, great. From what we can see, here are some levers. Here are some things to dive into on your side with your ops team, let's say. We'll help you figure out, are there roles that you don't need? Are there fixed costs that you don't need? Could you offshore certain costs? There's so many ways we can help. And sometimes the answer is it's not going to work in the near term.
Well, that's an okay answer, right? We
100%.
often talk to clients that want to exit for a certain amount. We say, we can get you there, just not yet.
Exactly.
You got to stick around and do some things. So you got to be honest with them along the way. Talk to me again about the experience of your folks. Like, at what level of education do they have? What level of, were they CFOs in prior organizations? Were they expert bookkeepers and CFOs? Just talk to me about
also
that
my
a little
staff.
bit.
So we're a small team. So I was a CFO for a private equity group and a private lending company for a number of years. Just didn't want to do the corporate rat race anymore. So I left that. We have another CFO who was a forensic auditor who's been doing bookkeeping and controllership and CFO work for many, many years, more than me, actually. Our vice president worked just this summer. He switched to us from a $50 million a year e-commerce company. Before that, he was at a $120 million mining company, and he led the financial planning departments for both of those companies.
Cool.
My financial analyst was an AIG, Emerson, Citibank alumni. So we really look for people that are multidisciplinary, but also like really, really good.
Okay. All right. So one of the big struggles that, as you know, most online businesses have, and if we just talk about e-commerce, actually, it could be content or SaaS businesses or even agencies, is predicting cash flow. Sometimes it's very hard to do, and if growth goes off the charts, trying to keep up with inventory really diminishes the cash on hand. How do you plan for all of that? What kind of work does a fractional CFO to help manage that, do the forecasting, and have the owner stress a little bit less and be able to, make sure that they're able to take enough money out of the company to feed their family?
Totally. So anyone that tells you that they can predict what cash flow looks like next year is probably lying. How we do it is we look at a number of scenarios. So at the most basic, we're going to have a forecast that looks at next year. It's going to be probably the most likely occurrence. So revenue is going to be, let's say 10 million. Okay. And profit will be, let's say, $1 million. That's our base case. It's the most likely scenario. It's the one that's based right off of the numbers this year. Then we're going to look at a worst case. So what if the CPAs go horrible? What if the cost of goods goes up? So that case is going to look something like, well, maybe you're doing 7 million. And what does profit look like if revenue comes in at 7? Then we're going to look at a best case. The best case could be 15 million, but that means then you have to buy a whole bunch more inventory. So we're going to test these 3 scenarios at minimum. The other thing we like to do is we like to test the best case inventory purchasing plan with the base or worst case revenue plan, as in you overbought inventory. What does that do? Your cash flow, can you withstand it? How do the margins suffer or not? And what we need to do is come up with what we're willing to bet for next year or the year after. So if you bet on the best case and it doesn't happen, you've way overbought inventory. So can you afford to do that or can you not? If you can't, we might need to dial back That might mean you sell out here and there, but it's a conservative way to make sure you don't run out of business. Like you don't run out of cash, and you can survive, fight again next year.
As part of that process, do you work with the owners of the business to determine what their living needs are, livable wage, something that
Oh, definitely.
it's taken me, I've been self-employed for over 25 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the challenge of being self-employed is, your income goes up, it goes down, it goes
Yeah.
up, it goes down, and you just take distributions
Mm-hmm.
now, and you take whatever you can salary wise to benefit, so you're not paying self-employment tax and get some money into Social Security if it's going to be around by the time we all retire. But setting, figuring out and setting what a livable wage would be, I think it doesn't sound like it's hard, but it feels like it's hard. It's been hard for me over the years, over the decades at this point. Finally, I'm at the point where I know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just set that, do you work? So you do work with the owners of the business to set that dollar amount, on a monthly basis, and then you work the cash flow after that, because that's an expense. It's going to be above the profit line, right?
Yes. So sometimes it's distributions, dividends. Sometimes it's wages. We don't work with them like on a personal financial planning level.
Right.
We'll try to figure out like what do you want to take from the business. We will put that in the forecast. Okay, great, and we'll leave that in through these scenarios, and we'll see, does one of these knock your earnings out of where you want them to be? If so, are you okay with that for a time period, or are you not? If you're not, then we scale back the forecast. We figure out another way to make it work. A lot of what we do is personalized to an owner. So some owners, you'll know this too, are happy to take risk, happy to work off their savings for 3 months, and some are not. And so in our case, we work with them to figure out what they're willing to risk. And of course, I'm usually the chicken little in the conversation saying, hey, I don't think you should do that. I don't think you should risk this today. Sometimes my job is to be a bit more cavalier when the owner is very conservative, and to say, hey, you have a really big cash reserve. You can take market share with this. But it's all based around personal preference and trying to figure out the owner's risk tolerance, basically.
Let's talk about the current economic environment then. You're talking about cash flow projections, best case, worst case, middle of the road. And if you built up cash reserves, take market share. What are your conversations like with clients now that may or may not be worried about a further economic downturn in the next 6 to 12 months?
So if I'm talking to someone who's not worried at all, I'm being chicken little in that conversation. So I'm saying, hey, you know what? Like, we have no idea. So you should be conservative. So I'm advising caution with adding fixed costs and salaries. I'm advising generally small bets. The term small is relative to what the company can do. It's also relative to the owner's risk tolerance. But generally, I'm advising caution. I wouldn't suggest anybody buys inventory based on their best case right now. But it's, at the end of the day, if someone wants to make a big bet, I'm going to be there to model what it looks like and model the downside. And I'll be there for them if it doesn't work and try to figure out a way out of it. But typically, I'm advising caution to those that don't see a problem in the future. Conversely, go ahead.
No. Let's hear the converse part.
So conversely, if someone is like, there's going to be a huge problem, I got to sit on all this cash. I'm saying, well, we don't know there's going to be a big problem. So let's make some calculated bets. And I have 2 clients in mind that I'm thinking of when I say this. They have strong cash reserves. They've managed their fixed costs. They've managed their payroll. This is the time to make the calculated bets. This is the time to try new things to market, because as everyone stops spending, if they do, then they're now, as they innovate and how they, market and how they do their product, they're going to come up out of any problem we have better off than if they didn't test at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting time for many companies trying to figure out, what cash flow is going to look like in the next 6 to 12 months. Building up cash reserves is something that a lot of folks I've talked to over the last few months have done. But in order to do that, and this seems like it would be a simple task, I think it's best to probably pick a how many months cash reserve do I need in case things fall off a cliff. Believe it or not, though, I feel like a lot of people have challenges doing that.
Yes, they do.
Why do you think that is?
Um, I think part of it is the nature of entrepreneurs. I think we're all risk takers in general. We see upside, we're optimistic, and you know, and for those reasons we're successful, but also for those reasons we can trip on our own strengths, I think. So when you look at rose-colored glasses all the time, well, that's can cause problems because it's not always going to be a good outcome. So that's why I think it's hard for people to build reserves. It's the nature of the game and nature of who we are as entrepreneurs.
Painful, I tell you. We've made a point of doing it this year, in the last 12 months. I mean, and then you've got to account for the fact that you didn't distribute that money, but you've got to pay the taxes on those earnings as
Sir,
well.
yeah.
It's and it, given the calendar year 2022 and what happened in the market, it's probably best that we held our money and use it for other purposes. All right, let's delve further into cash flow.
Sure.
What are, without hiring a fractional CFO firm, what are the top 1 to 3 things you'd suggest people do to really get a better handle on their finances and cash flows?
Absolutely. So, the number one, and this relates to, I've worked with now, I don't know, 20 companies, and I've talked to hundreds more. The happiest founders that I know have been very cautious about adding fixed costs and salaries. They have the stress of a lot of work, but they don't have to worry now about cash flow, and they can think about how I'm going to take market share. And this is the number one thing that I've seen is people that are cautious with fixed costs and salaries are the happiest in the 3 years I've been doing this as a fractional. That's what I've seen. So that's number one. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. And let me address number 1 before we get to number 2.
Sure.
And I love to give personal examples. So Quiet Light, historically, we've been around since 2007. Historically, we had no fixed overhead, literally no fixed overhead, because our advisors got, they earned a percentage of transactions. They didn't get paid salaries. In 2021, we had to scale up, or we grew by 85% over the previous year, and we grew 55% for the last 5 years in a row.
Yep.
So we had to scale up people-wise because we needed to support a larger team of advisors. We felt the same, that we scaled up a bit much with people, and we're trying to, if you can get the right people in the right seat, and be more efficient with it. But I completely agree with happy founders that
Totally.
Have low fixed overhead, because it takes that stress and concern away about meeting payroll and things of that nature. So 100% agree. Number 2.
That's the way we do it too. Like, we will wait. I won't hire for a role until that role is covered by revenue. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of work to do it that way, but I don't have to worry about cash. So number 2, I would say, is go get financing when you don't need it. So people wait till they're like, ah, shit, this order I got to pay for, I got to finance it. And then it's like, well, it's too late. Or now the banks can't move as fast as you need. Or for example, they're like, hey, we're going to invest in growth. And what that means sometimes is adding payroll, which would reduce your net income. But what they should do is go get the loan first while their net income is still 20% or whatever the number would be. Because when the bank looks at a couple of years of good profit, they're more than willing to give you the money now. Whereas if you wait and you hire those killers, let's say, to grow the business, then your net income is 5, 10, the banks are less willing to lend. So I will say this time and time again, go get money before you need it. And you can get the best terms that way too.
Okay, I agree 1,000%. I was playing golf with Uncle Walter, folks, and he's been my mentor for about 20 years now. And he said the same thing to me out on the golf course. He said, the best thing you can do is get a line of credit set up before you need it. Now, being the smartest person in the room, I didn't do that. And in 2010, I sold my last e-commerce business and didn't set up a line of credit. I had close to $1 million in equity in my home, and I had money in the market, but didn't want to take any money out of the market because it was trending down. So I sold my business, plenty of cash, plenty of equity, plenty of stocks and bonds. And I went to get a line of, or a home equity line of credit just on my house.
Yep.
And it was a local bank. They know me. I know them. Great relationship. And they're, sorry, Joe, I'm sorry. You don't have a job. I'm like, you're kidding me. She's like, no, these are the rules. You don't have a job. You don't have any income, so to speak.
Unbelievable.
And we're not going to give you a line of credit on that house. So I waited too long. And there were opportunities that I missed out on because I wasn't going to take cash out of the market. I wasn't going to use my proceeds from my sale. And I wanted to use a line of credit on my home, which was the intention. That's why I put so much down, mainly because I'm an entrepreneur and I don't know, what things are going to be like. But critically important for those out there listening to this going, yeah, I'll get to that someday. Someday's going to be here and it's going to be too late. Get a line of credit set up. We actually have a partners page with a number of lending opportunities or options for you. Go to quietlight.com/partners. And there's some for acquisition lending. There's some for inventory lending and things of that nature as well. Yep. Local bank, if you could build that relationship, sometimes I think it's the best option for you as long as you're setting it up well in advance.
Day. With the local bank, I 100% agree. Get that relationship, get a small line of credit. So you're used to working with the credit team. So they know you, they get reports. And then when you need the big one, then they're there and they're primed. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100% agree on that too. So we're 2 for 2.
Yep.
What's number 3 here?
This might sound counterintuitive, but regular bookkeeping. Regular bookkeeping, so when COVID first kind of popped off, the early days of my business were helping people arrange financing. I wanted to just help entrepreneurs get money. I talked to probably 400 people in 6 months. The number one reason they couldn't access government support, loans, whatever, they didn't have their books ready to go. Number one reason. So this is number 3, because if you don't have bookkeeping, if the books are not ready when a banker asks or when you need it, or even let's say you can't look at your financials and know how you're doing, there's no way for you to manage. And if you don't have bookkeeping, a fractional CFO can't even help you unless you let them do the bookkeeping too. You're just blind. You're blind. And so you can't be blind.
You are preaching to the choir. If I had a voice that I could sing with, I would do it now. I've been preaching this for a decade or more. We recently were approached by somebody that would like to sell their business to Quiet Light. Okay. And they had 1 year of financials in an Excel file. And we're like, do you not know who we are? Do you not know what we do? Do you not understand what we've been preaching for a decade? And you come to us and want to sell your business with this little financial information?
Yeah,
absolutely not. It makes you be able to get lending easier, but you're going to wake up someday and you're going to be tired. And you're going to want to exit. Hopefully you're not going to wake up and decide to exit. As I say, you want to sort of get trained and learn to exit and do it at your own time in the future when the value and time is right for you. But you're not even going to get out of the gate if you don't have clean financials.
Yep.
Right?
Nowhere. Yep.
I give examples in the book about, it was a guy named Bob. He was like 49 years old. His goal was to retire at 50 and become a minister. And he had, a decade worth of financials in an Excel spreadsheet. And we went out to market, went under LOI twice, and it fell through twice just because the buyers lacked confidence.
No confidence
in the details. He took the same data, Matt, and hired a bookkeeper finally and put it in QuickBooks, spit it out. And it's the same information, just exported from QuickBooks.
Wow.
It was right. So the history that the Excel files were right.
Yeah.
QuickBooks was right, but having it there in QuickBooks just installed much more confidence in buyers. We ended up reversing the process, ended up with 3 offers and let them go through the due diligence files, the data room, and then we closed within 2 weeks of deciding on which one, which was kind of a nice process. But it closed for $50,000 more because the financials were in good shape and the offers got more competitive.
Beautiful.
So the number one thing I think owners can do in terms of maximizing the value of their business, reducing stress and getting peace of mind is building the business so that it's, something that can be viewed from an outside party with confidence. You're instilling confidence in potential buyers and investors and bankers that are going to loan you money or buy your company. And you want to make sure they feel fully confident in you and your business so that they're going to stroke a bigger check or a more down payment or lend you money on a line of credit that you need to continue to grow or hire people. So I am 100% on board. with
great.
all three. So I'm glad we didn't plan that, but I'm totally in agreement.
Perfect.
Totally in agreement. Okay. Any other thoughts or wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience in terms of the benefits of fractional CFO work or things that they can do to further improve the value of their business or put it in a position to be able to hire somebody like your team more readily?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you don't hire a CFO, what I would say that you could do is do some form of planning. So even down to as simple as print out your QuickBooks month by month profit and loss, and then type in your estimates to the right over time, and then find out what your net profit would be. Just even that will put you ahead of other folks. And there are tools out there like Float app is one, Fathom is one, and they can help you with the scenario planning a bit more automated. But do any form of planning. And one of the reasons why is we know the plans don't work out the way you make the plan. However, when you make a plan, you can look back and say, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I thought would happen. It did or didn't happen, but why? So I hired this role and they didn't, sales didn't go up. Why? Is it an OKR thing? Is it a personality thing? But it allows you to go back and dissect the past and figure out what happened. If you're looking at, like I say, the ways to grow or get to a point where you can work with a fractional CFO. Again, bookkeeping is huge. Get a good bookkeeper, get them sending you stuff every month. Look at it. Target gross margin for like a brand selling items, 60% for an agency could be, I would say 60% is great. 50-40 is okay if you can minimize your like admin costs. But those are the key things.
We've talked about bookkeepers here. Let me give a shout out to, again, that partner page at QuietLight, quietlight.com/partners. We've got 8 bookkeepers that we've worked with consistently over the last 15 years. We trust and respect them. Everybody on the team at QuietLight gives feedback on a quarterly basis. We send out a survey to the 15 advisors about the folks that we've got there. And if there's enough negative stuff, we just kick them off and remove them from it. But quietlight.com/partners, that'll help you, audience, in terms of finding a good bookkeeper if you're convinced now that you need one. I would say that we probably need to add a section to this for fractional CFOs. Wouldn't you think, Matt?
I think that'd be great. There's a lot of really good folks out there.
Including yourself.
Including myself, yeah. Of course, yeah. But
awesome. Well, this has been great. How do folks reach you? I know they can probably go to eightx.co, but is that the best approach, or is there other ways that you want to have them reach out to you as well? If
you want to chat, get in touch, I would say LinkedIn is a great opportunity. So find me on LinkedIn. I accept all my connection requests. And
can you spell your last name for the audience?
Yeah, it's Putra. So P as in Peter, Utra. So Matt Putra. Look me up on LinkedIn. Send me a DM. I will have lots of chats with people through DM. Lots of people reach out just for a coffee and a hang. I do that as much as I can. I even will give advice, short stuff if you need it. If you comment on my posts, I'll answer most questions. I will sometimes create new posts off questions I get. So yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to get in touch in the short term. And if you want to meet, you can go to my site and book a call, but even LinkedIn is probably still faster than that.
Excellent. We'll put those up in the show notes as well.
Thanks.
Matt, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us and appreciate your wisdom.
Thanks so much for having me.